All right, welcome to tonight's Officiate Michigan Day presentation. Officiate Michigan presentation is on providing quality feedback. It is an approach to observations at the high school level. And tonight's presenter is Steve Miller, longtime MHSAA and college official. So I'll hand it over to him. I'll continue to let some folks in. Please make sure that you remain muted unless you have a question or comment. Steve?
Thank you, Brent. Can I get a couple of thumbs up or yes, you can hear me on your end? Just want to make sure everybody's good with the audio. All right, I see.
Yep, loud and clear.
Beautiful. Thank you. Okay, so a couple things like Brent mentioned. First of all, thank you to Brent for allowing me to come in and spend some time with you here this evening. Certainly, at least in my part of the state, I live in Warren, Michigan, which is just north of Detroit, if you're not familiar. But a beautiful, summer, warm, sunny afternoon or early evening now. So thanks for taking some time to jump on here with us. And I appreciate Brent reaching out to me to share some of my experiences as not only an official, but certainly as it relates to the high school observation or observation of high school officials. So just a couple of housekeeping things. This isn't going to be a very long presentation unless the questions take us in different directions, which is fine for observations and questions you may have about it. But one of the things you want to do is we have the chat feature enabled, which Brent will monitor for me. And we'll chime in. And if you have any questions, I'm going to pause at various intervals every couple slides to open the floor to any questions. So just unmute your mic at that time, and we'll take questions throughout. All right. So appreciate that. All right. Everybody should be seeing my screen. This is about myself. I just want to give you a little bit of a quick overview about myself as an official. I registered first as a MHSA official in 1991 upon exiting high school. As a matter of fact, thank you, Brent. I just received my 30-year plaque, so the salt and pepper is starting to come in heavy here, but it's gone by in a flash, and it's been extremely enjoyable, that's for sure. I actually have multi-sport experience. I currently only do football at the collegiate level. Which we'll get into, allowing me to go out on Friday nights to observe. But I do have experience in baseball and in volleyball, of all things. We used to joke that because volleyball and football were so similar, I got into both of them, which of course is not the truth. I had a longtime friend and mentor of mine that was a volleyball official as well, and he exposed me to that sport. And I got involved in that, did a little at the high school and collegiate level as well. I also have been a high school teacher since 1999, graduated from Wayne State University, and I teach in the L'Anse Creuse Public School District, which is about 20 miles north of Detroit here in Southeast Michigan. And since 2014, I've been a member of both the GLIAC, Great Lakes Association, the conference, and the MIAA Football Conference. So as Brent said, I have experience at both the high school and collegiate level. And in the last several years, I have been able to dedicate just about every Friday night to being an MHSA football observer, which I greatly enjoy. So it's one of those unique situations where I can give back, which is something hopefully we all strive to do as we move forward in our careers. Okay. So the goal of observing officials, specifically high school officials, is to obviously give quality feedback that helps improve their officiating. Everybody enters officiating at different times in their lives, whether it be out of high school like I did or later in life, middle of, raising a family, whatever level they're at. That is the goal, is to get them from wherever they're at as a new official or even a veteran and everywhere in between, and to bump that level up. It's something that sometimes is lost. Some people get into observing and they want to give them every little minute detail to make them the next great, NFL prospect in the case of football. But at the high school level, we want to focus on just making that person the best they can be at this level. And then after that, obviously it's on from there if they want to experience that. All right. So why do people officiate high school sports? This is one of the things that I think is really paramount to understanding who we're dealing with. First of all, and in no particular order, I believe camaraderie is one of the best things that have ever come out of officiating for me in 30 years. I have a long list of friends and acquaintances around the state, around the country, that I have been really blessed to been able to officiate with, and many of them I call close friends. That I still keep in contact with to this day. Staying involved with the game is obviously something that is near and dear to a lot of players or a lot of people as a former player, to stay involved with whatever game this is you're officiating, in my case, football. You're people. Officials are people, at least I hope you are. Being around and I'll talk about football in particular because that is obviously my focus in the current state of my career. But there's few things that are more exciting for us as football officials than either being out on a field on a Friday night, or in my case, up in the press box observing high school officials, or on a Saturday afternoon being out on a college football field. As a matter of fact, I'll have players or coaches come up to me before a game or during a timeout. I say, "How you doing today, ref?" I say, "You know what? I'm on a college football field and it's Saturday afternoon. I can't imagine it being any better." And they smile and nod and agree with me. So it's being around people and being around the game and games we love. That is key. All right. So this is the audience participation point or part of the presentation. So if you could do me a favor, take a moment to take out your cell phone. I know some of you may be on your cell phone device or on your smartphone right now. And if you are, that's okay. But for those of you on a computer or on an iPad, if you could get your QR code reader out, and most of the iPhones nowadays and even the Android phones, they already have this integrated into your phone app or into your camera app, excuse me. So if you just go ahead and put your camera up to that image, that QR code should take you to a website. And that website is actually a form that I put together that is going to ask you to give me some responses. So in essence, what you're going to look for, and if you can't get to it, it's not a huge deal, but it'll be interesting to see what kind of feedback you can give me. So as you're doing that, and if you can, I'm going to read it for you from my end. So here's the situation. When you get to that, there's a motivation question. It's multiple choice. It's very simple. You only have two options. So the first question is, you are being observed working a football game as a deep wing official. And if you're not a football official, that is either the side judge or the field judge position. Clearly, you have some things to work on. And the question is, which of the following feedback would you best respond to meeting with the observer who comes in at halftime to talk to you? So there's two choices. The first one is, quote, "You had a DPI, which stands for defensive pass interference call in the first quarter, that looked like early contact and a good call. Nice work. Just make sure you give more ground," which means you lead the play more, "and make sure the players stay upfield from you so you don't get beat." The second option is, quote, "The defensive pass interference or DPI call you had looked pretty easy, but you were out of position. Have you ever seen a 7 official mechanics manual, much less read it? You look like you have no idea what you're doing or no clue what you're doing out there." So we'll give everybody just a few moments to respond to this. All right. Well, as you may guess, the great majority of individuals, as these responses come in, as a matter of fact, I believe I only have one response to the negative, or to the negative feedback, if you will. That the first one is your preferred response, or that you would best respond to. So I'm curious, and if you want to put it in the chat, or if you want to unmute your mic, or maybe it was just a mistake that you didn't read it right. If the one or two of you that responded to the more negative answer, would you mind sharing your thought on that as why? And if not, that's okay. Give you a minute to chime in here. All right. Thought I'd give that person a chance to respond, but that's okay if you don't want to. I totally understand. Brent, we don't have anything on the chat, do we?
No, nothing on the chat for that.
Okay, cool. So anyway, the whole point here is obvious, is that most people don't respond well, especially as an adult learner, to basically being embarrassed. And unfortunately, I actually heard a observer actually say almost verbatim that second option, and I was stunned. And it was something that I'll never forget. And I thought to myself, this person doesn't get it. This person does not understand how to coach people up. And that's what we're all about, is coaching people up. So speaking of coaching them up, here's what we're talking about. The first thing is attitude is key. So the dictator coach, which is clearly that second person in the response, they feel more like a boss. And we've all, regardless of what we do as a profession, obviously this is an avocation for the great majority of us, but whatever we do as a profession, if you're a teacher, if you're at construction, whatever you do, you have bosses that feel like the boss. They're not approachable. They make corrections in a more negative tone. And that's not what we're all about. Versus the mentor coach. Feels more like a peer, approachable, makes corrections in a positive tone. The latter is the one that I certainly strive to. And based on feedback I've gotten from crews, I've been pretty successful at projecting that mentor coach kind of feeling. But, we've all worked for people who are on both sides of this fence. Sometimes a nice mix of the two, depending on what you're doing, is nice, but you're going to get more out of people, especially as an adult, if you treat somebody more like a mentor and in a positive tone. So it's very important. Okay. Let's go ahead and pause for just a moment, see if anybody has any questions, and then we'll get into a look at an example that I use for note-taking from football.
Nothing on chat so far.
Okay, Brent, thank you. Brent, are you seeing on your end, we've got some green lines here on the screen? Not sure where that came from.
Yeah, it looks like it got marked up. I don't think it was me.
Okay. Maybe
Yeah.
it's an annotation here. That's weird. Clear all drawings. Hey, I did it. Look at me. Go us. Are they gone now?
Yes, you're all set.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So seeing no questions, let's go ahead and get into.
Actually, Steve, couple are coming in here.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
One is actually one here is just referencing when they're observing, they like to ask the officials what in particular they may be working on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways you can go about observing. That's certainly one of them. So when you get into a scenario where the officials know that you're actually going to be there, then certainly you can reach out to them beforehand. If you meet with them before the game, you can ask that. What is it you'd like me to look for? Is there anything specifically you'd like me to look at that you're working on? That's a great point. One of the things that I actually do, I don't tell the crew that I'm coming. And I usually tell the athletic director when I reach out to them is, to not advertise that I'm going to be there. And the reason I do that is I find that some crews, when they know there's an observer coming, they don't officiate as well. There's a nervous factor. They think that they're being tested or being, watched in a negative way. That's my personal feeling. But every situation's different. Every sport's different. But that's my own personal opinion on that. I was always taught from a young officiating age that always officiate as though somebody is scouting you, as somebody's watching you. And even though we know that's not always going to be the case, that's my take on that. But again, that is good input for sure. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. All right, super. So on your screens, you should see a MHSA officials game report or a game report that says at MHSA. What I've done is obviously just put some generic names in here. This happens to be a 7 official crew. And this is a format that I've come up with that works out just really well for me personally. We'll get into the observation forms that the MHSAA uses and how, that can fold into this. But I tend to be a note taker. So we're going to get into the note taking part here in a minute and which the do's and don'ts. But I wanted to show you this first. So one of the things that I do is I take first some general crew notes, and this can go across every sport, whether it be volleyball, wrestling, baseball. How does the crew look? How does their uniform look? I'm certainly not going to read through all this, but as you look at this, I've got very, very specific detailed notes that I type on my iPad, and I'll have a picture of my setup here in the press box later on in the presentation. But what I do is I write down everything I see. So I tend to be a pretty copious note taker. And the reason I want to do that is I want to give the crew, and I warn them this ahead of time when I meet with them. I say, I'm a note taker. Please do not take that as equating it to you did a poor job. There's a lot of good and a lot of things to work on, and it's a good mix of both. But all of these things are just things I see that don't relate to direct game action. So then once I get into the game itself, I have a chart here for specific positions. And obviously football is unique because in this case, I have a 7 official crew. If you're doing, volleyball, let's say you have first referee, second referee, the line judges are involved as well, and you're observing them. You could also include them in something like this as R1, R2. A specific position notes. So like, for instance, the referee, the first thing I look at is positioning. There we go. Thank you. The first thing I look at is positioning, because without good positioning, obviously our chances of getting a call correct are minimized tremendously. So I look at all 7 officials and their positioning, their pre-snap, how they move during the play, where they appear to be looking. All of these items will go into this category. So as the game progresses, that's where I will put these. So these lists build as I go through the game. Okay. So from the first opening kickoff all the way through, as long as I'm there, which often is the entire game, depending on the situation in the game. But this list is going to build by position. So I'll constantly go back to that. This is the meat and potatoes of what I do. And again, you could relate this to just about any sport. Let's take baseball, for instance, since that's another one I had familiarity with as an official. You could say, bottom of the first inning, 1 out, runner on second base. There's a fly ball hit to right field, and just short order, describe what happened and what the movement was. Sometimes there's a question with a clock here. Obviously I've got 12 minutes in the first quarter, 9:44, and it goes down. I also note the position that's involved. In this case, it's the line judge. In this case, it's the field judge and line judge. And again, these are just, you could do this on paper. I find it easier just to go ahead and scribe it out with my iPad so that it's already set to go, and I can get these out to the crew with just some minor editing. And then I just go ahead and put horizontal lines by quarter. Obviously, if you're not familiar with the game of high school football these days, many teams will get upwards of 160 plus snaps or plays, sometimes upwards to 190 to 200. So I don't obviously mark down everything, because you'll see the time codes here are some distance apart. Anytime I see a flag being thrown, I usually try to comment on that. Not necessarily good call, bad call, but if it's a good call, I'll certainly say that. But I might say, you want to look at something. Okay, and then these are foul codes that we use at the NCAA level that has been trickling down as far as foul codes, even for the high school game. So we refer to them. So that's what that is. Okay. I'm going to go through 2 more slides, and then I'm going to go ahead and pause for any more questions. And then we'll go from there. All right. So the MHSAA officials page, Brent has put together 2 links on here, and this, you'll see the actual URL up here. So if you go through the officials page to registered observers, you'll see this. The MHSAA Observer Handbook is here, which is a pretty good sized document. I was happy to see, I hadn't looked real deep into it lately, but I was happy to see that I, try and do most of what's in there. So without any deviation, so that's good. But sport specific observation reports as well. So for instance, in the handbook, there are links to these specific sport observation forms. So what I typically do is I typically give the officials what you saw on the last screen. So I create a PDF file of that, and I get those out to the crew as soon as I can. So that really gives them the real full look at what they did. But then on top of that, I will often put something like this together as well, particularly as I get to identifying officials for potential postseason play as well, which of course is part of what we want to do as observers, is to try and see, who's out there and who is most qualified for that. What to do when you are observing officials, or when observing officials. First of all, you want to be a note taker, and obviously I do that. Scribe that play by play like I talked about. And another thing that I've found is you're going to start observing officials, or maybe you already are, if you are an observer, that you already know and probably have worked with almost every week. Although the further I get from high school football and working every Friday night, the less people I'm familiar with as being an on-field partner through the years. But you want to look at them in their official capacity, in their officiating capacity. Don't look at them as Bill or Sally or Brent or Steve or whoever. Look at them as the referee, the umpire. That's why I have those listed like that. So look at them as a very genderless, personless, nameless entity, if you will. All right, so let's talk about what not to do. We know we don't want to be negative or sarcastic. We went through that with that little exercise. You want to make sure you don't make officials feel like they don't belong there. It's hard enough to get officials onto a playing surface, the field, the court, wherever it is, the swimming pool. If you're a swimming official, you certainly don't want to tear them down. You want to build them up. You want to coach them up. You want to tell them things that they're doing good, and you want to tell them things that they can do better. And it'd be nice if those were as equitable as possible. Of course, sometimes that's not going to be the case, but you have to judge that. Only focus on mistakes. That's bad. You saw in my notes there that obviously I try to write everything down that I see, the positives, the improvements. And when I go down and talk to a crew at halftime, and that'll take me to my next slide here, I usually go down and talk to a crew at halftime unless there's something that tells me, either through previous knowledge of the crew or maybe the supervisor that conference has told me, you know what, you don't even let them know you're there even at halftime. But 99 times out of 100, I go down and introduce myself, as the observer. I don't tell them my credentials. I don't, wear any kind of, I'm just plain observer. And generally, if they're local officials, they know who I am. And I just give everybody one good thing that I thought they did. Every position, all 5 or all 7 officials, I give them one good thing. And then I go through one easy mechanical fix that they can do in the second half. Nothing crazy, nothing that's going to screw them up or throw them off their game, because the last thing that they need is to start thinking, oh my gosh, Steve's up in the press box taking copious notes. I don't want to put that pressure on them. So I'm very kind and very positive with them, but I also point out some things that they need to do better as well. And then one of the nice things that I've done is usually by the time I get home, I can email out to the crew, and I have all their email addresses, from Arbiter, my report on PDF. And I've had crew chiefs that have emailed me back and said, Steve, that was great. Thank you so much. Cause we're out on Friday night having a Diet Coke and a sandwich after the game. And we're able to read the notes, and they talk about it in their post game. So that makes me feel good, because having those extra set of eyes from somebody that's been there like myself is really good. So, and then again, as needed, follow up with the MHSA observers report. Okay. As promised, this was not going to be a long presentation. It's just a little before 7:00. So I'm wide open and all ears for any questions or comments you may have.
Hi, Steve. This is Jack Miles. Thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you, Jack. How are you doing today?
Good. I like to talk about, I help out my assigners and evaluate at the lower levels, JV or freshman. And for umpires, we usually evaluate after, and we only have 2 in front of us. So as you mentioned, I try to always come up with 2 positives when I address the first official or then into the second, even if it's to the point of, hey, your shoes look good and you're dressed real well. You can find 2 positives. And then at the lower level, you could drown them with information like they have to drink out of a fire hose. Yep. Find a couple things that they need to work on, that they can work on. And then if, let's say in baseball, no runners on and they're supposed to come up the line for a pull foot swipe tag, if they only miss that once or maybe twice, but all the other innings they were up there, you really don't need to bring that up, saying, in the second inning and the 5th inning, you forgot to come up the line.
Right.
That gets into the negative aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And then normally what I do is I try to talk to them about, okay, what we discussed, what would you like to work on the next game? And let them verbalize that back and say, well, head height, or I'm releasing too soon as the trail to the lead. Mm-hmm. I want to work on that. Mm-hmm. And that way it gets them set what you discussed in there.
Right.
And if I know who they are, they're in my association, I normally follow up with the veteran umpire or basketball or football official and say, hey, I've given Brent Rice 2 things to work on. Remind them in pregame that they're going to work on head height or releasing. And it's been working with the younger officials. They really suck it up like a sponge when they only have a couple things other than all your notes. There's 15 different things they can work on. Thank you.
No, you're welcome, Jack. And that's all good input. One of the things I want to make sure I clarify too is when you look at the notes that I put out there, that's for varsity level officials. Okay. And we all know that, we have officials in football that are working varsity football in their first, second, third year. So it may be overwhelming to them, but they usually hopefully have veteran guys around them to help them sponge that up. And I've found that's been very positive. But no, you're exactly right. I agree. You going back to what I said at the beginning about, you got to know who you're dealing with. Know the officials, where they're at. If they're new freshmen, junior high official, things like that, and you're mentoring them. We don't have typically enough observers anyway to go around. I mean, we're all working. So, you're not going to go out and watch a freshman or junior high 7th and 8th grade football game or basketball game. You're going to be working with that young official. So you'll see things on a different basis, on a different level, being on the field or the court with them. Okay. Thanks, Jack. Anything else?
Hi, have a quick question. This is Doris Goodluck. I'm a gymnastics official.
Hi, Doris. Good to see you.
I've been a competitive cheer almost 40 years. Is this mainly for the big three, or are they trying to get this into some of the other sports as well?
When you say big three, Doris,
football, basketball, baseball. That's why I consider the big three.
Oh, I understand.
I'm a fan of all, but
I understand.
just wondered, because this is the first I've heard of an observer.
Okay.
I've been officiating for a long time.
Right.
And I didn't know if they were trying to get this into all sports, or are they just trying to focus on more, where they have more officials throughout the state.
Well, I'm gonna let Brent chime in on that, since he has the wider scope on all that. Brent, you want to take that question? If he's still with me, Mr. Rice. Oh, he might be all over. I think Brent might have stepped away for a minute. Well, Doris, first of all,
I'm here. Sorry, I apologize for that.
No, that's okay, Brent. So, did you hear Doris's question?
No, I did not. I was starting the
other training. Yeah, no problem. So I'll just rephrase it real quick. So Doris's question was essentially, she's a longtime gymnastics official, and this was the first time that she has ever, heard of the MHSA having observers. So her question was this something for, she referred to it as the big three, being, basketball, football, baseball, softball, or is this something that the MHSA officiating program is supporting for all sports?
So we do support it for all sports, and those sports that are traditionally, that are less mechanically designed, like gymnastics or competitive cheer, swim, in some instances, we would encourage that to be more of a hands-on approach. So if you had observers, and we could put those in, that they actually almost sit alongside as a piece to be able to not participate, not go along with them, but to be right there so that they can take notes about the judging that is going on, and then better ways that they can either calculate scores, look at the performances that are going on, those types of things. So yes, we would encourage it for all sports.
Okay. That answer it for you, Doris?
Yes, thank you so much.
Perfect. You're welcome. Thanks, Doris. All right. Anything else out there?
Hey, Steve, this is Lance. So I'm from the Upper Peninsula here, and I just kind of want to know if you guys kind of remember us up here, if there's any observers. You said that, it's a good thing to try to find officials for postseason consideration. This is my fourth year doing this, and doing postseason games is something I've been trying to look forward to doing. I don't know if there's any observers up here.
Well, Lance, I'm actually very familiar with the Upper Peninsula. I just took a trip across the UP last week.
I'm from Escanaba.
You're from Escanaba. Okay. I did the Lake Superior State, Northern Michigan, Michigan Tech tours, because my son's going to be a senior this year in high school. So, but aside from that, I'm very familiar with Copper Country. I had a extended family that had a cottage and houses up in the Keweenaw. So at any rate, to answer your question, and Brent can certainly chime in on this, I don't know of specific folks up there, obviously, as far as observers. I'm going to speculate that it's tough having observers up there because, as you know, Lance, the sheer numbers of officials are very, very low compared to other parts of the state. My advice would be are you currently on a football crew?
Well, yes and no. I was part of one, but then all these guys decided to kind of pull up mutiny, and I just kind of got booted out, and I'm like, I'm kind of back to square one. Being a part of a crew has been extremely hard. I'm mostly just flying solo for football, and I just start emailing the heck out of everybody, and usually they're busy or I'm busy, and sometimes I feel like I'm in the wrong part of the state.
That's it. You gotta come south of the bridge. No, I'm kidding.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
This is Jack Miles. I'm in the Eastern Upper Peninsula. If Lance wants to get a hold of me, I'll be happy to square him away with any concerns or anything. I'm on Drummond Island, Lance, so I'll be happy to hook up with you.
Okay, neat.
What city are you from, Lance?
Escanaba.
Well, why don't you come see us this Saturday at the All-Star game, and we'll bring you down to the sidelines, and you'll be happy to do some evaluation, and we'll get you squared away on your future. What do you think?
Okay, what time is the
invitation-
All-Star game at?
It's in Marquette, but it's an invitation to you.
Yeah, I knew that. Yeah.
Yeah, get with me offline, and I'll help you out.
Okay, sounds good.
Officiating is one big fraternity, ladies and gentlemen, and you just saw
Amen
it
to that.
front row and center. So my other advice would be, other than Jack coming in and just taking it, which was awesome, would be to contact your local association. And because I'm sure you guys have an association in that area. Am I right, Lance?
We do, but it's kind of like, hey, we're part of this, but no one really has taken command of our Upper Peninsula Officials Association.
Okay.
A couple of guys are like, maybe we should union. Nobody really wants to do anything.
Well,
it's just kind of like BS talk.
I know that Drummond Island is not down US 2 from you, but you can certainly get involved with Jack, and it sounds like he's going to point you in the right direction. So.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I do have a couple games. Doing a couple at Powers North Central. So
cool.
All
right, Lance. Well, you get together with Jack, and he will certainly point you in the right direction. Jack, thanks for chiming in on that. Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for joining us from north of the bridge. That's awesome. Anything else out there? Either on chat? Yes.
Steve, this is Bonnie Koenig. I'm a 27-year competitive cheer official.
Sometimes if you click off or click on with your mouse.
Hold on a second. I'm going to mute Brent. Okay, Bonnie, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm a 27-year competitive cheer official.
Okay.
And I'm from the Flint area. My question is, who decides to send an observer? Is it the MHSAA? Is it the league? Who requests it, and how does it come about?
Oh, good question. So in my case, I actually reached out to the local assigners here in the Detroit area, of which there are several for football. And, obviously I've had working relationships with them for many years. And, since I had come off the field as an active high school official and just working the collegiate game, I had some Fridays that I wasn't traveling that I could dedicate. So in my case, I reached out to them. I think it would depend by sport. Again, because I'm going to guess that in the competitive cheer ranks, there are not a ton of officials that aren't working on a given cheer Saturday or however many events you have. Is that correct, Bonnie?
Yes, our numbers are, there's quite a few, but they're all busy.
Everybody's been absolutely. So, in a sport like that, where you have very low number of officials, in ratio to the number of events that you have or number of slots that you need to officiate, I think what Brent said to the gymnastics question is going to be applicable here as well, where you would try to, identify people that can get in there and do that, where there's less of a mechanical piece to it. Obviously football, we're talking about, running up and down a field and being in position. Whereas, and I know from what little I know about competitive cheer, obviously it's like gymnastics, and it's very technical, and there's points and there's safety. Am I right on that, Bonnie?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So because of that, obviously it's a very specific niche there. And you want to do kind of that side-by-side observation. I know that, does that answer it for you?
It does. I just wondered, like, how, if a group or a league wanted to have an observer come in, that they would go to MHSAA and ask if someone was qualified to be an observer. And I just haven't had a chance to go into the observer's handbook and see if there's a page dedicated to competitive cheer yet. So I was thinking, well, if there is, we'll look at it and offer that up to our members and say,
Right.
look at these things and let's study them and see where we can be stronger at, and kind of fine tune things just for us as a group.
You know,
Thank you.
no, absolutely, Bonnie. One of the things that I just thought of as you were talking there was regarding the connection between the collegiate level and competitive cheer at the high school. Do you know of any officials that judge at the competitive cheer level or at the competitive cheer at the collegiate level?
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
So that to me would be the first natural step in connecting those people and have them come in. And I'm sure, just like in football, there's significant differences of rules, but there's also a lot of similarities as well. So that is what I would do.
Thank you very much.
And I can speak a little bit to that, Bonnie, is that we have, so here are the sports that we have. We have for reports, where we have forms for observations, our baseball, boys and girls basketball, football, boys and girls soccer, softball, volleyball, and wrestling. Those are currently what we've put together. We're certainly open to formatting forms so that they can tailor to a certain sport. We would certainly need to work with some of the officiating leaders in each of those sports that would like to do that. You know, the question regarding whether or not how like observers are determined. We don't send observers out from our office. It's currently done through the local association. They actually nominate and will fill out an observer form. And then there's certain requirements that have to be met. When those requirements are met, then we will then approve them as an observer and allow them to then send us observations. Any local association can have any observers they'd like, but for us to accept them as official observations that we consider here in the office, they would have to be approved through our office. We are looking at ways, and maybe this group can send me suggestions as how we can formalize this as a position where maybe we send out folks, hey, we'd like you to go watch this crew or these officials, and that it would actually be almost an assignment out of our office. And so I would be open to suggestions on how that could work. Certainly the number of officials that we have, we're using as many as, you know, is available. So it does take spare officials at times, and sometimes we don't have the luxury to have that. So that's just a few thoughts on how our observation program works, at least from the state office perspective.
Yep, and I'll add to that as well. The local assigners here in the Detroit area, they will ask. They just assign me through Arbiter, and they're very good about sending me to see crews that they know want to get that next step, whether it be, you know, from an okay varsity schedule to a better varsity schedule to a pretty good varsity schedule to work deeper in the postseason or the like. So that seems to be the pattern that the folks that assign me to games seem to look for. Okay, great questions. Anything else out there? Wonderful.
Steve, there's a question from Bruce. He said, do you have any quick tips for working with quote unquote resistant officials that you observe?
Oh, very good question. Resistant officials. So I'm going to make an assumption that resistant officials, meaning they're resistant to the feedback. Is that?
That would be my guess. Yes, that would be my guess.
That's correct, Steve.
Oh, hi, Bruce.
Hi.
How are you? So is that the correct assumption that you were getting at?
Yes.
So yeah, we've all worked in our careers with officials who think they've already gone to the top of the heap or arrived, if you will, at whatever level they're at. And we all know, of course, through whether it's be 20, 30, 2 years, whatever, that we have room for improvement in everything. So I think, and it's been my experience that as long as you keep that overall positive vibe going, as long as you can establish yourself as somebody that's not necessarily authoritarian, you're there to help, you're there to mentor. And it's difficult because if you're somebody that that is very familiar to that person, that may be tougher. And so I've been fortunate to observe a lot of officials that aren't as familiar with me. So when I come in, they're, or maybe one guy will know me and they know me as having a collegiate experience. So they'll just kind of listen. But even still, if you think about that whole positive vibe, I really think that does a really good service to try and disarm those people. That would be my number one comment on that, Bruce. Other than that, sometimes the folks that you give advice to, you just serve it up and you say, here's the 2 cents, and they take it or they leave it. And if they leave it, well, that's on them. Does that answer it for you, Bruce?
It does. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Great question. Wonderful.
Well, we're pretty good. There are a couple of comments in here, and I can address them for the group. Something regarding semifinal, final games where we have observers. We do that occasionally. That is really directed by the director of each sport as to whether or not they're going to have that. We do it in a couple of sports that we have, particularly the one that Jim is talking about is observations at our hockey semifinals and finals, and we have observers for both positions separately, referees and linesmen. So that is a piece of that. We have observers that go to our football finals. Additionally, on occasion, I think that Nate has had observers at the basketball finals as well. It is not generally something, the question is, do we send folks out to observe people that we're kind of looking at moving up? We don't, but it's certainly one of the options that we're considering for the future. So I'm going to jump off and get on this volleyball. So Steve, whenever you're done, you can go ahead and end the presentation. Folks, I apologize for jumping off, but I have to meet up with this one. Take care.
No problem, Brent. Thank you. He told me ahead of time he was juggling 2 meetings here, so it's not a problem. Anything else that I can answer for anybody or offer some comments for?
Steve, can you hear me?
I can. Who am I talking
It's Jim
to?
Garofalo. I'm from Howell. I do I do ice hockey officiating.
Hi, Jim.
And I do observations for the semifinals and the finals. One of the things that seems to work well for us is we kind of use a sandwich method when we go in and talk to the guys. Mm-hmm. And give them a couple of good things, give them a couple of bad things, finish up with a couple of good things, mm-hmm. kind of send them on their way with a good feeling about themselves. And then, like you said, it's always good to find the positive and kind of build on that. And somebody earlier had mentioned about not overloading guys. And that seems to be, when I've been evaluated, that seems to be what a lot of evaluators want to do. It's like, you can't fix 1,000 things, pick 2 things. And then let the guys go out and work on those 2 things and then pick 2 more.
You know what? I couldn't agree more. I've worked for crew chiefs specifically, that one of my friends would say they're picking horse stuff off of, or excuse me, fly stuff off of horse stuff. We'll keep it extremely G-rated, if you know what I mean. There are, and it was Jim, right?
Yes, Jim.
Okay, Jim. Thank you. I thought so. So Jim, you mentioned, doing work at the hockey finals. Obviously, there are officials that get to the Final Four in every sport. Some of them are new to that level. Some of them are veterans at that level. Some of them have different levels of comfort. So I'm sure, Jim can speak to his sport. You're going to have guys that are, and ladies for that matter, in any sport, is gender neutral, that are extremely nervous, that are extremely amped up, if you will. And, you're trying to coach them up. I have actually been fortunate enough for the last several years now to be one of, and it's an observer, but I consider it more of a mentor to the semifinal crews. So if you're not familiar with football, once you get to the semifinals and finals in the football tournament, all 8 divisions have 7-person crews now working in the semifinals, and 8 of the officiating crews go on to work the championship games at Ford Field Thanksgiving weekend. And what has been done in the past is they try to put an observer on the game, and it's been wonderful because I look at those 7 officials, some of which are very new to that level, and many times they're working in positions they've never worked in as a field judge and side judge. Typically, we only use 5 officials in a lot of areas of the state for high school football. And now we have a 7 official system in the last 2 rounds. Now there's a clinic they go to the previous weekend and that, but it's a big step for them. So I look at that as more of a coaching opportunity and really coach those guys up. And there's nothing that gives me more gratification than to see the crew go out there on Thanksgiving weekend and have a good, comfortable performance and do a good job together. And hopefully, I give them the confidence and the tidbits to do that. So that's good stuff. Thank you, Jim. Anything else?
Yes, Steve, Roger Wenzel.
Hi, Roger. How are you?
I'm doing fine. On football crews this year, they want us to switch head linesman, line judge back and forth at the half. You haven't worked. I've worked head lineman now for like 30 years. Now I've got to go switch to the other side. What is the mechanics of that? You're looking at everything like from the opposite way. You're not looking in the sun anymore, which you do 99% of the time.
Yeah.
And now all your mechanics are like backwards. It's like going from shortstop to second base.
Right. So is your question, what are my thoughts on it, or?
Well, no, it's
okay.
Now as being the observer on that, you're going to see these guys that are looking just completely off kilter.
Right. So at the collegiate level, I'm an umpire. Okay. But I have worked as a line of scrimmage official. It's been a number of years. So I do distinctly remember as a young guy looking straight into the sun on those, those Northwest fields. So I know exactly what you're talking about, Roger. So at the collegiate level, just to kind of give you a quick little, 30,000 foot view, the whole point of the switch was to obviously get a different perspective and get them away from the same coach. Okay. And there's a variety of details with that, it stemmed from the NFL and all that stuff. But from an observation standpoint, I can tell you that at the collegiate level, we don't switch the chains as you probably know. Okay. So the line judge will be in essence the headline judge, because they call it the headline judge in the NCAA now, will be the H in mechanics. Okay. So that is the person I have primary enforcement of penalties with the H being the backup in the first half. And then those roles just switch. So even though there are differences between the L and the H, as you well know, being a veteran line of scrimmage official, I, as an observer, wouldn't get hung up on that minutia of well, you're supposed to do this in the first half and this in the second half. My advice would be just certainly don't overthink it. As the L, as the H being on that side, you're basically the line of scrimmage official without chain responsibility in that half. I'm certain in clinics they're going to talk about that, but I would not overthink that piece. That would be my thought on that.
All righty. Thank you.
Absolutely, Roger. Thanks for bringing it up. Appreciate that. All right. Anything else?
Hey, Steve. Steve
Yeah.
Youngblood here.
Hi, Steve Youngblood. How are you?
Good. So I'm thinking about getting observing. you know, because I'm a little bit older and the knees aren't what they used to be. So I'm looking to transition maybe to that observer role. You know, I've had you out to our games a couple times. I mean, what would you suggest for me to do? Like if I'm not working maybe a freshman game, you know, on a Wednesday, go out and just kind of watch a crew by myself and kind of, you know, take notes just so I feel comfortable with doing that?
Absolutely. I think that would be a great start. You know, and one of the things, you know, since you and I are in the same area, Steve, I mean, you and I can certainly, you know, get together and do a little bit more. I'd even be willing to meet up with you and kind of get into the more nuts and bolts, you know, and sit with you for a half kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you can kind of observe me doing that, observe me observing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great start if you want to go ahead and do that. But yeah, as far as transitioning off the field, I mean, my initial answer, I started chuckling when you said that because you can't leave the field. You have
No,
to.
I know.
Got
Mario, kill me.
You got too many good years left in you. Okay. But no, I mean, you know, and observing obviously is very important. And these are the things that, you know, as time goes on, it's harder and harder to leave the field for a lot of people because that's our lifeblood, right? As officials, you know, getting out there with our peers and the camaraderie that comes from it and the challenge of trying to get plays right, snap after snap, in our case in football, you know, is part of that vibe. I mean, that's what we really groove on. You know, and for me, Steve, as you know, it was just a matter of, you know, of me transitioning out of the high school game, you know, for other officiating reasons. So, but no, I think for the sub varsity stuff, I think that'd be great. And you know, even, you know, as you're officiating those lower levels, I mean, you can certainly, and I know you are, you know, mentor those young officials and do that indirect, if you will, observation even while you're working.
All right. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. Man, these are great questions. Thanks so much for being on, everybody. You never know what you're going to get when you do presentations like this virtually, but I think it's been a blessing, actually, as much as it's been a pain. The Officiate Michigan stuff is cool, being able to do this on Zoom from our own living rooms, or in this case, my own office. Anything else out there? All right. All right, everybody. Well, I really appreciate you spending time. We've been on an hour, and I really thank you for spending the time. Best of luck to all of you in whatever seasons you're going to go into, whether it be the fall, the spring, or the winter, or the spring. And thank you so much for being a part of the presentation today. Take care, everyone. Good night.
Nice job, Steve. Nice presentation.
Thank you.
At Safe Light Auto Glass, we're committed to taking care